The one that you see on the left, this is the sum of cubes. So for this one, we're going to use the pattern A, B, A squared, AB, B squared. That's the sum of cubes. The one on the left, well, actually the one on the right, sorry. The one on the right is the difference of squares. So it's important that you're able to recognize the two patterns. You do have a skills check next week, and it's over factoring. Okay, so for the first one, we have to figure out what is A. So what do you think we're multiplying 3 times to get to 27x cubed? And if you're not sure, go to page 7 in your notes. On page 7, you have your perfect cubes, and that might remind you. So page 7, that's where you have your perfect cubes, and then the front of the room, we have our perfect squares. So what number did you multiply? What number to the power of 3 is 27? 3. So that means that A is 3x. And then what number multiplied 3 times gives you 64? When you look on page 7. 4. So that's our first 2 terms. So we need 5 terms. So then our next thing we're going to do is take this A value and multiply it twice. So we're going to take 3x times 3x, and that gives us 9x squared. And then in the middle, we multiply these 2 together. So what is 3x times 4? 12x. So that will go in the middle. And then at the end, we have 4 times 4. And 4 times 4 would be 16. So now we have all 5 terms, and now we soak it. Same sign, opposite sign, always plus. So we started with the plus sign. And because we started with a plus sign, we keep a plus sign. We keep the same sign. And then it's the opposite, and the opposite of addition would be subtraction. And at the end, it's always a plus. For number 2, though, we're looking for squares. So what number multiplied twice gives you 64? Well, we know that 8 to the power of 2 is 64. So I have 8 squared x squared minus 3 squared. So in this example, A is 8x. So we're going to put that in front of both of our parentheses. And then our 3, which is B, that will go in the back. And for this pattern, one has to be addition and one has to be subtraction. So it's not a SOAP. It's just one has to be plus and the other one has to be minus. And that's the difference of squares. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. So in your notes, go to page 9. We're going to finish out factoring today. Homework 2 is due on Monday. So page 9, look at letter F. We're skipping a little bit around. So this is what we talked about yesterday because you have 4 terms. Anytime you see 4 terms, that is the grouping method. It's factor by grouping. So we're going to take the first 2 and put those together. And then the second 2, we're going to put those in a group. So when I look at my first 2 terms, I'm going to break that down. 12k cubed is 4 times 3, and then we have k plus 4 times 1, and then 2 k's. So looking at that first group, I just broke it down to prime, to all of the factors. What would be the GCF that both terms have, Isaiah?
4k squared.
4k squared. So 4k squared. 4k squared. That's our GCF. We're going to take that out. And then we're going to write what's left over inside of the parentheses. So that would be 3k plus 1. That's going to stay on the inside. Now, when you look at your blue group, you have to take out something. And this is a question like this is in your homework. Because if we look at it, you're like, oh, but it already matches, so I don't have to take out something. But you do. You have to take something out of both groups. And what's the only number that I can divide out that won't change it? A 1. So I'm going to break that down, though. So that 3k is really a 3 times 1 times k plus 1 times 1. That's what you really have there. So we're going to take out the 1. Sorry, we're not going to take, yeah, we're going to take out the 1. So we're got a plus 1 on the outside. And then what we have left inside, again, would be 3k plus 1. So notice that these two are the same. So let's make our 2 parentheses for our factors. The first factor is 3k plus 1. And the second factor is the GCFs, which would be 4k squared plus 1. And that would be your factors. Any questions about how we work through this one? This is just reviewing what we talked about yesterday. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our mixed review where we're going to do a little bit of everything. So still on page 9, we're going to skip down to the mixed review, which has every type of factoring that we've talked about. So the first thing we're going to do, this is 3 terms. We have to make sure it's set equal to 0, and then step 2 is look for a GCF. So this is already set equal to 0. And the greatest common factor that I could take out of everything is an x. So this is what we have. So we have our A, B, and C. So we got to factor this down. So we need to take A times C. So we got to make our box. So A times C is 2 times 10, and that would be 20. And B is -9. So if you need to, you can look at your multiplication chart. But you need to find 2 numbers that will multiply to give you positive 20 and add to negative. 1 second. Let me give everybody a chance to see if they can figure out what those numbers are. Then I'm going to start making my box. So anyone know what those numbers would be? They multiply to be 20 and add to -9. So what'd you say, Nehemiah? Or somebody said it. Did you say it, Daniel? What'd you say? -5, -4. Who agrees? So those would be my two numbers. So we're going to put those inside of my box. And now we're going to take out the GCF. So if you were to break down the inside of this box, which I don't know if it's helpful, but I'll do it. So you have a 2XX in this box, and in this box you have a 2, 2 and an X. In this box you have a 5 and an X. And in this box you have a 5 and a 2. So go ahead and take out your GCFs. Okay, so we have a 2 and an X that we can take out of the first column. And then in the second column, what do both of these have? What do they both have in the box that we can take out? A 5. Now you have to be careful though, because it has to match the sign. So we're going to take out a -5. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on my factor line. So we got 2x minus 5. That's a factor. And then when we go across, the only thing left is a x and a 2. So I'm going to take out the x. And it has to be a -2 because it has to match the sign. So that would be your 3 factors. Go ahead and set all 3 of your factors equal to 0 to get your solution. One of your solutions will be a fraction. So take a minute and solve all 3 of those to get your 3 solutions. Now the first one is actually already solved. So we don't have to do anything with that one. It's the other 2. Go ahead and solve those other 2 for x. All right, so we're going to add the 5. And then divide by 2. So that means I get 5 over 2. I'm going to write it underneath because I'm using a lot of space. And for my second one, the only thing or the third one, all I have to do is add 2. And that would be your 3 solutions. All right, any questions? All right, so our next question in our review that we're going to do is C. So let's look at C. So for question C, the first thing you want to do, you always start by setting it equal to 0. This does not equal 0, so I have to subtract that 1. So when I subtract it, it becomes 9x squared minus 1 equals 0. And this is the difference of squares, just like we had in our Bell work. And remember, that factors down to a plus b and a minus b. So take a minute and see if you can figure out what our 2 factors would be for this question. So you got to figure out what number multiplies to give you 9, what number multiplies to give you 1. So what multiplies to give you 9x squared? What is A? 3 what? X. Put that in the front. And the only thing that multiplies to be 1 is 1 times 1. And then for this pattern, 1 has to be addition and 1 has to give you subtraction. So that's your factors. Now go ahead and find your solutions. Set both of those factors equal to 0 and solve them both to get your 2 solutions. So we subtract the 1. And then we divide by 3. So my first solution would be x equals negative 1/3. And for our second one, we have to add the 1. And divide by 3. So we get x equals positive 1/3. And that would be our 2 answers. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we do have a skills check next week. And then the week after that is our test over chapter 3. All right, last one. We got a factor by grouping. So this is 4 terms. So we have to factor by grouping. So whenever it's 4 terms, that's where you put 2 in a group and 2 in a group. So I'm going to put these first 2 in a group together. And then I'm going to break it down. So we have a 2x, x, x plus a 3x, x. Go ahead and take out your GCF. So we got x, x. So x squared is going to come out. And then what do we have left on the inside? On the inside, we have 2x plus 3. So that's going to stay on the inside. Now, this is the first time we've seen something like this, but notice that both terms are negative. That means that we have a negative 1 that we're going to have to factor out. So for this one, when we break it down, we have negative 1, and then we have 2x minus, and then I have a negative 1. Oh, actually, I'm going to make that a plus. Plus, then I have a negative 1, and then a 4 and a 3. So what they both have, again, this is only when both terms are negative. We know that we can take out a negative 1. And what else can we take out of both of them? A 4. So the GCF I'm taking out would be negative 1 times 4, which is negative 4. And then what's left over, actually, let me, so we have negative 1 times 4, which is negative 4. So then what's left over is 2x plus 3. And that's going to go on the inside. So remember, these have to match. So that means my first factor would be 2x plus 3. And the second factor is what I have in parentheses, which would be x squared minus 4. Now this one is a little bit different because we can actually factor this down again. We got our 2x plus 3, but then x squared minus 4 can also factor down because that's the difference of squares. So what do you think that's going to factor down to? X squared minus 4. What number multiplies against itself to give you 4? What's the square root of 4? 2. And then one has to be addition and one has to be subtraction. So take a moment and solve all 3 of these. Set all 3 of these equal to 0. And get your 3 solutions. The first one is a fraction and the last 2 aren't. So we subtract the 3, we divide by 2, so our first answer would be negative 3 over 2. Our second one, we just subtract the 2, so that would be negative 2. And the third one, we add 2. So just a reminder, homework 2 is due on Monday. So let's everyone take out homework 2 so we can finish that out.